Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today is December 19th, and we are honoring the worldwide release of The Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. It is hard to believe it has been 20 years. It is the 20th anniversary of this movie. I can't believe it. I remember standing around with my Dungeons & Dragons group in college as we watched the trailer for the first time, and you have got to believe that we were all going wackadoodle about who was who, pointing out to the different characters, hearing the snippets of Howard Shore's music for the first time, and we were ready to watch that movie. It was something else. It was one of those things where I was happy that we had a decent internet connection at the time so we could watch that trailer. Having grown up with the books as well as the animated Hobbit movie, I was thrilled to be getting this live-action Lord of the Rings movie. And here I am on my own podcast 20 years later, being able to show the movie to my kids, to be able to talk about it with different guests that come on the podcast. It is something else. The Fellowship of the Ring stands up well for a 20-year-old movie as opposed to other movies that came out around that time. And you have to credit Peter Jackson and the Weta team and everyone else that was involved for just making such a beautiful movie. I still want to go to New Zealand and visit like the sites and see the filming locations one day, fingers crossed. I identify with Sam. I have a deep love for Gimli, and I couldn't have asked for a better movie. If you haven't watched the movie, go find a copy of the extended edition and dive in. It'll be a good way to spend over 4 hours sitting and enjoying this piece of media, not to mention, the Two Towers and Return of the King that come after this movie. I formed my own fellowship, just like I did with the Hobbit anniversary episode a few years ago. I have 9 members of the fellowship, 9 guests, to discuss their love of this film. Each one brings a different experience. Please listen and enjoy, and check out the show notes to make sure that you give them each a follow on their social media. To start things off, we have Lauren, or you might know her on Instagram as Lauren Does Cosplay.
So I watched The Fellowship of the Ring for the first time in my house because I was too young to watch it in theaters. It came out in 2001, and I think I was 8 years old. So I watched it at home. I think we had it on VHS to start, and then, we ended up getting them on DVD. But I just was everything about it just spoke to me. Like, even now, I think every time I watch it, I've seen it probably 500 times, and that's not an exaggeration, in the last 20 years. And every time I'm just struck by the music and how touching every moment is and how well cast every single person is, and the landscapes and the story, and it has always just been so powerful to me. And even when I watched it 8 years ago, and now I'm almost 28, and I still love it every single time. And it's crazy that a movie can have so much impact. And a lot of times you think, like, it's just you, like you're just having this profound experience with a piece of media. But then to know that it has affected so many people in this amazing way, and even 20 years later, that we can all come together and talk about this movie and still be so excited to watch it. Like, if I have a friend that comes to me and says, let's watch Lord of the Rings, like, I'm down. I need no convincing, because it's always a good movie. It's always going to be such a profound experience to be able to consume this piece of media. And I feel very fortunate to live in a world where I was here when Lord of the Rings, the movie came out, and I still, as an adult, get to enjoy it with new people all the time. I mean, we talked about it on your podcast 2 years ago, and I'm going to be happy to talk about it for the next 20 years, I'm sure. So I love making friends and finding new people to talk about Lord of the Rings with, and it's just one of the best movies ever made. And I think that's it. That's all I got to say.
The next member of the fellowship is Justin Zenger of the Zeng This podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zenger from the Zeng This podcast, and I'm here to talk about Fellowship of the Rings. I cannot believe it's been 20 years. I remember I was in high school. I remember this movie coming out. I remember watching it and going, I need to read those books. And about every year since then, I've read the books at least once every year to year and a half. I thoroughly enjoyed these books, love these movies, wish I had read the books prior to watching the movies, but these movies are iconic and I love them. They are very quotable. I'm going to do a few of my favorite quotes now. So anyways, I guess I'm going to start with a wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. Nobody tosses a dwarf is another good one. I cannot express my love for these movies. Covering them on Zeng This a while back was great to do. If I remember correctly, David was on for that episode, so it was great to have him on for that. Recasting, I can't imagine recasting these. They are amazing movies. They had an amazing cast. This was a something that has always been hailed as an unfilmable series, and I think that they did the most amazing job possible they could of it. With that being said, the version you should, of course, be watching is the extended cuts, because those are the most true to form, and I love them so much, and love the fact that I'm getting able to have a moment, talk about them with you, dear listener of Tales from the Fandom. But the last thing I can leave you with is this: keep it secret, keep it safe.
The next member of the fellowship is Wilhelmina, aka Elvendal on Instagram.
Megavanen and hello friends, it's me, Elvendal. You might remember me from a bit earlier this year from my very own episode of Tales from the Fandom, where I came and I talked about my cosplay adventures and Lord of the Rings and Hellboy and just everything fantasy and elfy. You know me. Well, I'm back again. I mean, did you really think you could get rid of me that easily? So in my previous interview, I talked a little bit about my love for Lord of the Rings in the beginning, but I really didn't get into the gory details of my deep, deep, deep love for this series. So I just had to come back and be a part of this special episode dedicated to Fellowship of the Rings anniversary. I mean, you know me, my entire image is based off of Lord of the Rings, so strap in, my friends. I'm holding you captive, and you're going to sit here and listen to me talk about this franchise. So where do I even begin? There's so many fandoms that hold pieces of my heart, you know, like Hellboy and like all of the anime that I love. But Lord of the Rings is one of those more important ones for sure. It helped to shape me into who I am today. I mean, my cosplay name, my internet username, is Elvendal, for goodness sake. It should be obvious. Lord of the Rings helped me discover the cottagecore community. That's my home away from all the cosplaying that I do. It introduced me to so many amazing people within the fandom. I have so many amazing Lord of the Rings cosplays that I have that I wouldn't have if I didn't know about this franchise. I owe so much to Lord of the Rings as a whole. So I discovered Lord of the Rings thanks to my wonderful husband sometime last year around the time of my birthday. He introduced me to it because he knew about my lifelong love of fantasy and also because he LARPs it. So I was obviously curious, and when he told me about it, I was absolutely fascinated by the characters. And when I looked into the franchise, I was just amazed by the aesthetic of it all, and even just the basic premise of the story blew me away. It all just seems so cool. I fell in love immediately just from the few things I had seen. So my mother ended up getting me the first 3 main books for my birthday that year. I had briefly told her about discovering Lord of the Rings and how cool it had all seemed, and she was definitely along for the ride. She's lived fantasy for most of her life too, and she felt right at home in it with me. Over the holidays a little later in December, we managed to actually thrift the extended editions of the movies, and we binged the first two, Fellowship and the Two Towers. And we ended up actually going to see them in IMAX when they were re-released a few months later. So my first time watching Return of the King was on a movie screen, and that was life-changing. Many tears were shed, no surprise. I would give anything to be able to experience those movies again for the first time. I can't even put it into words. It was just so magical on so many levels. I had been in a really bad way because of the pandemic, and being so isolated from my friends, my family, I felt like I had no one because I could only be close to the people I loved through phone screens or my computer screen. My husband and I are long distance currently because of the pandemic mess, but both of us having such a strong love for Lord of the Rings brought us closer and gave us something to share. It's cheesy, I know, but it meant a lot to us, and it still does. Lord of the Rings gave me a home when I felt super alone. I honestly can't really explain it, but watching these movies just made me feel so comforted and so calm. It was honestly addicting, and it made me so excited to have a new fandom to immerse myself in. When I delved even deeper into the history of Middle-earth, thanks to the encouragement of my husband, of course, I discovered the Silmarillion, and it was love at first sight all over again, just multiplied by 1,000,000. I'll try not to go off on too big of a tangent since this episode is about Fellowship's anniversary and all that and the movies, but oh god, do I love the Silmarillion. You're sitting here, and you're going to hear me talk about it at least a little bit. I feel like I have to. I'll make it quick, I promise. Luthien Tinevale is the best Tolkien character, and I will not accept criticism. I feel such a kinship to her because of how much she's been through and how much of a little badass she is. I mean, spoiler alert, she goes up against 2 Dark Lords and she freaking wins, all just to save the man she loves. What a queen. Also, because I'm here, I have to talk about Sauron, of course. I mentioned very briefly how much I love Sauron in my previous interview, but oh god, I love him so much. I know it's probably shocking for me of all people to just totally be head over heels for a Dark Lord and the villain of the series, but I mean, look at him. Just look at him. The man is super powerful, and his fair forms that he can take within the series are just so pretty. I mean, have you seen Anatar, the Lord of Gifts? And his armor in the movies even? 10 out of 10. I would pledge my soul to him in exchange for a pretty ring. Anyways, back to Lord of the Rings. The characters really do feel like family to me. That might be a little bit cringy, but you just grow so attached to them during the story, especially if it's helping you through a tough time like it did for me. Seeing Frodo and his friends stick together to save the world of Middle-earth is just so endearing, and don't even get me started on Aragorn's love for Arwen. They make me so emotional. They're literally couple goals. Even though I'm a huge Sauron fangirl, it really is amazing to see the plight of the Fellowship, to defeat his evil and to save Middle-earth. It just goes to show that love and faith can really accomplish anything. There's so many things to learn from Lord of the Rings, and I know so many people that could benefit from its lessons in today's world. I also just want to say, I love how much depth there is to Tolkien's writing and world building. I'm a writer myself in my free time, and it just blows my mind the amount of lore and work he's put into making the world of Middle-earth. I've been actively into Lord of the Rings for just a little over a year, but there's still things I don't know, like characters and the lore that I haven't discovered and read about. I can see why people are intimidated by the series because of this, but like I said in my first interview here, it is so worth it, and it makes delving into the franchise all the more fun, because it's like you're constantly finding surprises and plot twists. It's so fun. That's the only way I can put it. That is pretty much everything I have to say about Lord of the Rings, for now at least. I could sit here and talk for hours about it, honestly, but you'd all be skeletons by the time I was done, I'm sure. I'm not even kidding. Anyways, I hope that you've enjoyed listening to my little segment of this special episode from Tales of the Fandom, and I hope all of you out there listening have a wonderful holiday season with your families and you stay safe out there in this scary world. This is Elvendal signing off and saying happy anniversary to Fellowship of the Ring. Nalu eg Vin.
The next member of the Fellowship is Mandy, also known as Mandybars on Instagram.
we can't talk about Lord of the Rings without talking about Fellowship of the Ring. It's the first book, it's the first movie, and I think everybody who watched Fellowship of the Ring for the first time, especially if you've read the book beforehand, is in childlike wonder and amazement at Tolkien's creations and lore brought to life, from the greenery of the Shire to the intensity of the battle scenes and to the camaraderie of the Fellowship. You see Legolas and Gimli, elf and dwarf, working together. You see Aragorn being a benevolent leader, a great representation for men. And of course you have the hobbits, who are wonderful: Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, and of course Gandalf, who is the most powerful of the Fellowship, but still possesses that good heart. And I think it's a lot about heart. I think it's a lot about how we build friendships and how we work together, and that good can triumph over evil. Fellowship of the Ring, great start to the trilogy, and it's made me a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I love the movies, the books, I love the cosplay, Dungeons and Dragons. It helps you get immersed into the wonderful world of Tolkien, and I thank him for bringing Middle-earth and Arda into our world.
Another member of my fellowship is Stephanie. You might know her on Instagram as Jedi.Moon.
So for me, Lord of the Rings, particularly Fellowship of the Rings, was kind of the stepping stone into just getting fully engulfed into what fantasy could be. The movies were coming out and I had already read The Hobbit and really liked it. And I started to read Fellowship. I think my dad went to the theaters and saw it before I did, and I was really mad. So I was like, well, I'm going to finish all the books so I know everything that happens before you. But just seeing the love and care that Peter Jackson and the various creators put in, how much visual world building they did, how they really, really tried to get that spirit of the books with the layers and layers of history and that lived in feeling. At the same time, we were getting, fun fantasy movies and Disney fantasy movies and Harry Potter, which was fun, but didn't nearly have the depth and the richness. And part of that is from the source material. And I say that with love. I grew up with great love of Harry Potter. It was kind of my gateway fantasy, but Lord of the Rings is what made me dive headfirst into it. It just was a movie like I had ever seen before. This was a serious fantasy, taking itself seriously like a history epic, and that was new to me. And critics were treating it like a serious film with something serious to say. And that to me was phenomenal, because it wasn't just, okay, you got these couple of weird kids or groups of people that are into something really niche. Fantasy really can touch large groups of people and have something universal to say that means a lot to a lot of different people. And so Fellowship to me kind of represented that shift of my understanding of the genre, represented the shift of, greater public's understanding of the genre. I truly don't think we would have had Game of Thrones without Fellowship of the Ring. So it's near and dear to my heart, and God bless the heavy use of practical effects, because it helps everything hold up so much better. Those movies look so much better than even The Hobbit does today.
The next member of our fellowship is Ellie, aka eg.cosplay on Instagram.
My favorite thing about Fellowship of the Ring is how timeless it is. Ever since its release, new generations have discovered the world of fantasy through this movie, and they have enjoyed the same world that we as fans have loved for so many years. The characters are like old friends, and we can find inspiration and motivation in so many quotes and moments from the movie. It's a comfort movie for so many people because it provides a sense of calm and ease that few movies can. Because so much of it was filmed on site, the film itself ages perfectly, and it can still hold its own against much of the newest animation technology. The costuming, the music, the directing, it all comes together so seamlessly to create a perfectly convincing view into the world of Middle-earth. Fellowship of the Ring has been there for me in times of joy and times of hardship, even as recently as the beginning of the pandemic. This movie serves as a reminder that we all face challenges in life, and these challenges can seem impossible and monumental, but even the smallest of us can tackle these challenges and overcome them with just the help of our friends. I'm so grateful for everything this movie has done for me personally, as well as all of us that have come to love it as much as we do, and I can't wait to see what else the world of Middle-earth has to offer us in the coming years.
Another member of my fellowship is Shelly Deutsch. You might see her on Instagram as Baddie Shelly.
Fellowship of the Rings has always been one of my favorite movies of all time. I've always loved the world of Tolkien. When I was growing up, my father would read The Hobbit to me. So I grew up mainly with The Hobbit, and later on he told me The Hobbit was kind of a prequel for this other story, and I was fascinated. Then I tried to read Lord of the Rings. I had a really difficult time reading Tolkien. I know he was more of a linguist and wanted to create this fantastic world, and he did such an amazing job. But the way he writes is very difficult for my brain to handle. I need that constant input of story in order to maintain that engagement. And when Tolkien starts focusing on where in the world they are and what passes and the different aspects of the world that's a little bit outside the story, I have a difficult time keeping track of that. So it was very difficult for me to read Tolkien as far as The Lord of the Rings goes, although I really wanted to. I made it through book 2 and then kind of phased out. So seeing the movies, starting with Fellowship, really solidified his world for me. I knew about elves. I knew about, of course, hobbits. I knew about, wizards and all that stuff, but I think it really brought their personalities of the characters to life for me. Of course, in the movies, the characters were a little bit overly done. Pippin was a little bit overly clumsy. I think Frodo was a little bit overly... Well, I guess Frodo was okay. I've never been a huge fan of Frodo to begin with. I think I like all the other characters. I love Samwise. And I think they did Samwise's character wonderfully. How he was scared of Gandalf and scared of things that might turn him unnatural and that kind of thing. I think they really did well with Sam. I think they did well with Smeagol. I really like how he had such a split personality. That really brought him to life. And I love Pippin. I think Merry was a little overlooked. Merry was a big part of the Hobbit foray going into the as far as the books were concerned. So I think in the movies he was a little bit overlooked, but overall I think they did a fantastic job bringing all the characters to life in Fellowship. I've always loved the beginning of things too, like the origin stories of characters, the first Iron Man, Captain Marvel, the first Spider-Man, the way things start. I enjoy watching them grow into things. So watching Frodo learn more about the world, watching Samwise acclimate himself to things outside of the Shire. I just love watching those characters grow, and I think Fellowship does a really good job of that. Another aspect of the movies I really enjoyed was the camera work, the scenery. Oh my goodness. New Zealand is amazing and gorgeous. The way they did the camera work and the tricks to show the different heights of dwarves versus hobbits versus wizards and man, that was unbelievable. It's just a mind-blowing movie to watch. And I know it's been 20 years, but still, it doesn't. There have been movies where 20 years later, you can really tell how badly, the CGI is and that kind of thing. I don't feel that way with Fellowship. I don't feel like the camera work or the tricks that they used are so old that they look cheesy. I don't believe that at all. In fact, when I was told it was 20 years old, I was like, no, I'm sorry. It can't be that old. It still looks amazing. But it's true. It's 20 years old. It just doesn't seem that way to me. So I think it's held up really well over the years. And especially with the world of Tolkien being so entrenched, at least in my fandom, I don't think it'll ever get that old. People have loved Tolkien for as long as the book has exists. People love elves and wizards and magic and fantasy. And I think this movie brings all of that to life. So I don't think it'll ever get old enough that people will stop loving these movies and this world. And I think Fellowship is the key to that.
Another member of the Fellowship is Tracy Tong. You may have heard her on the Broadswords podcast, and she streams on Twitch too.
Hello, my name is Tracy. I am a streamer and a cast member of the Broadswords, and I want to talk about what Fellowship of the Ring means to me. So, Fellowship of the Ring for me wasn't about the first experience of seeing the movie because, well, to be honest, I was 11 years old when it came out. I hadn't read the books yet. But it's about the subsequent experiences that stick with me. It's about the fact that this is a movie that holds up so well that we watch it once a year and it still takes my breath away every single time. There are so many things about it that I love that I honestly am a little bit lost at where to begin. The soundtrack is always something that really sticks to me because it's something that elevates this from being a great movie to just an incredible, memorable movie. Like the way that Howard Shore takes these little pieces of things like the Fellowship score and inserts them early on as the different members of the Fellowship start to join. And then we have that grand moment where they come over the ridge and you hear the horns exploding. And it just pulls you out of your seat. It's so amazing. I mean, the casting, I wouldn't change a single person in the Fellowship. Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn. Perfect. Elijah Wood as Frodo. Perfect. Sean Astin as Sam. Mind-blowingly perfect. And of course, I mean, Ian McKellen. Like, there is nobody else that could possibly play Gandalf. They somehow managed to pick these actors that had strong backgrounds and were well known, yet they each stepped into their roles and they will always be known for those roles in spite of the other great roles that they've had in their life. And I also always think of the sheer terror of the Balrog. That first moment when you hear the sounds of fire as the Balrog approaches and it just chills you to your bones is incredible. One of the most touching things about Fellowship of the Ring for me is these relationships that are built between the members of the Fellowship. You start to see the friendship between Gimli and Legolas grow when it started as just irritation with each other and this age-old fight between dwarves and elves, and the two of them begin to conquer it together. And you see Frodo and Sam as they depart on their own for the first time, and you know that the bond between them is something that will never be broken. And you have this change in Boromir when in the beginning he says Gondor will have no king, and then in his last breaths he calls Aragorn his king. There's just so many great things about Fellowship of the Ring that I feel like I can't summate it in less than 5 minutes, but I will just say that that series is my favorite movie series of all time. And I'm always so grateful for Fellowship to be a comfort movie to always turn back to. My name is Tracy. If you want to talk to me about Lord of the Rings anytime, you can find me on Twitter and at Twitch at TracySore.
And finally, rounding out this fellowship to talk about the Fellowship of the Ring is my friend Brett Stewart of the Movie Go Round podcast.
Hey folks, Brett Stewart here from the Movie Go Round podcast. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about why I love Fellowship of the Ring on the 20th anniversary of the film's release. I'll probably sound like the youngin' here on the podcast by saying this, but The Fellowship was the first film I ever saw in theaters. I was 5 years old. Honestly, maybe not the best parenting move. The Balrog was terrifying. But on the other hand, it introduced me early to the pinnacle of fantasy storytelling. As I've gotten older, I've come to realize The Fellowship is not only my favorite of the three films, but I think it's the one that embodies what I love most about the franchise. It's a film of character building. There's no massive wall to defend, no 1,000-person armies at war. That's all to come. It's not here yet. It's the story of the Fellowship bonding, of characters like Boromir finding redemption and Frodo realizing that he can't do this without a little help from his friends. It's not as cinematically colossal as its later entries, but the Fellowship stands tall as it did when I first saw it, both terrified and mesmerized by the monster in the deep. So happy birthday, Fellowship, and also thank you for the chance to geek out David and Tales from the Fandom. I so adore and love this show and really appreciate this opportunity. The Fellowship is great. Go rewatch it this year on its anniversary.
And there you have it, my fellowship for the 20th anniversary of Fellowship of the Ring, the movie. If you enjoyed listening to them, which I hope you did, please make sure to check out the show notes, Facebook page, or website, and click on their social medias. Give them a follow. Check out their work, their podcast, their streaming, what they do, their content, because they gave up their time for me to talk about this movie, and I can only ask that you go check out their work because they do wonderful stuff. So thank you, everyone, for participating, and thank you, Peter Jackson, Weta Team, the actors, cast, crew, and everyone that supported this movie in being made. It is such a wonderful movie. Thank you so much. And see you next year.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.